This is what we've come to look at here in Chilwell Road.
Right.
Wavertree is full of legends,
Yes.
as you probably realised by now. And here we see 4 horseshoes carved in sandstone.
Yeah.
This is the boundary wall of what's today the Olive Mount wing of Chilwell Comprehensive School.
Yeah.
But originally it was the grounds of a large mansion called Olive Mount. The house still exists, but the grounds have been much reduced. And there are 2 of these stones, each with 4 horseshoes on, here in Chilwell Road. One here and one a few yards further along. They're quite difficult to find.
I wouldn't have noticed that, definitely.
I often have to walk backwards and forwards looking for them. There are all sorts of stories about why these stones have come to be here in the wall. Some people will tell you that this is where the horse thieves of Wavertree were hanged on the corner of Thingwall Road here. Other people say this was the site of Shack Lady's smithy, but I've been through some of the old documents and directories. I haven't been able to find any record of a blacksmith called Shack Lady. Well, Mill Lane, where the Monk's Well was in fact the road leading from Old Swan to Wavertree Mill. There wasn't a mill in Mill Lane itself. The windmill was here, just off Woolton Road. We're on the trackway that leads through from Woolton Road towards the present-day Charles Berrington Road and Beverley Road. This was a very historic site. This was one of the only 4 so-called King's Mills in the Liverpool area. It was a medieval mill originally, and it was on, it's difficult to appreciate now with all the houses built around it, but it was quite an exposed site, ideal obviously to catch the wind. The mill itself, unfortunately, has gone for a long time, but the old mill cottages are still here, and there are actually old picture postcards in existence of this very trackway leading up, so you can see the mill with its sails and so on at the end. There were some unfortunate incidents associated with Wavertree Mill. On one occasion, the 10-year-old son of the coachman who lived in one of these cottages, he was killed by the sails of the mill turning round. He was the coachman of a man called Colonel Bourne, who lived at a big house called Heathfield. And then on another occasion, the daughter of the miller was scalped by, again, the sails turning round. She survived, but only just, apparently. And the stories grew that this mill, and particularly the quarry alongside where the houses have been built in Mendip Road, that was a quarry, and there was another one here behind this wall in what's now Torview Road. These quarries, it was said, were inhabited by an evil spirit who was causing these problems. And the miller was advised to set the sails so that the shadow in the shape of a cross stretched from corner to corner across the quarry. And well, you may laugh, but to get rid of the evil spirit. No problems were reported after that, so it seems to have done the trick. Well, here we are, Helen, in Beverley Road, and these 2 houses were built in the 1980s on the site of the mill. You can see the plaque on the wall commemorating the fact. In the middle of the lawn is one of the old millstones which was salvaged from the original site, and the circular bricks represents the foundations, although it's actually been moved something like 20 yards to this spot. There are 4 stone blocks around the edge of the circle. You can see one just over by the flowers there at the far side. Those actually very solid stone blocks supported the wooden legs of the mill. It was what's called a post mill. The whole structure rotated on a great big wooden post, a vertical post, and that itself was supported on 4 legs, and they were attached to the ground by means of the stone blocks. So these are the relics which fortunately were salvaged when the houses were built.
You brought me here to the Cock and Bottle. Are we stopping off for a pint?
Possibly later on, yes. Okay. But the reason we've come here is that this part of the Cock and Bottle, number 95 High Street, was originally the smallest house in England. There are numerous picture postcards around from Edwardian times with that title, usually with a little girl standing outside the front door. In fact, it's only in the last few months that the brewers have restored it to its original appearance, at least on the outside. They put a door downstairs and a window back upstairs. Only a few months ago there was just plain brickwork upstairs and a small window down below. It was called the smallest house in England. It was just 6 feet across, and you can see, well, in fact it was originally a passageway up the side of the pub, but probably around about 1850 it was decided to build a house squeezed into this 6 foot wide passageway, and it was just 14 feet from back to front. There are stories about how many children were raised here. It said that one couple raised 8 children in the house. And there is also a story that a man moved in, he weighed 20 stone and he couldn't get upstairs, so they had to double the staircase in width. Well, we've walked along Prince Alfred Road out of the High Street.
Yeah.
Now, Prince Alfred Road wasn't always Prince Alfred Road. The original name was Cow Lane, and that gives you some idea what it must have been like, an old farm track leading out of the village.
Yeah.
Now, Cow Lane happened to be the home in 1866 of one of the wealthiest men in Liverpool. His name was Samuel Graves, and he lived in a house called the Grange. Now, it's gone now, but it used to stand more or less probably where the trees are there, just on the side of the road.
Right.
And this area was the estates, the grounds of Wavertree Grange. What happened in 1866 was that Queen Victoria's second son, the Duke of Edinburgh, came to Liverpool to stay. He stayed for 2 nights as the guest of Samuel Graves, who was Liverpool's Member of Parliament at that time, as well as being a very wealthy merchant. And it was proposed that in honour of the royal visit, Cow Lane should be renamed Prince Alfred Road, and this was probably one of the best things that had ever happened, because it must have been a bit embarrassing for one of the richest men in Liverpool to give his address as Cow Lane, Wavertree Grange. But in 1895, the whole estate was put up for sale, and everyone assumed that it would be bought by builders and covered in the sort of houses that had been spreading out very rapidly from Liverpool between Picton and Smithdown roads. But all of a sudden, in May 1895, it was announced that an anonymous individual, had purchased this estate and was giving it to the city of Liverpool to be used, at least initially, as a children's playground, a place to provide recreation for the children of Liverpool specifically. It wasn't to be an ornamental park like Sefton Park or Prince's Park. It was to be just a place for children to play sports and run around. Yeah. And in fact, the ornamental lake that used to stand in the middle was filled in as part of that scheme.
Yeah.
He was an anonymous benefactor. Yeah. No one knew who he was, and hence Wavertree Playground, which was the official name, very rapidly became The Mystery. And nowadays the children of Wavertree will call it The Mystery or the Mizzy. And often the mystery will be not who the mystery man was, but why it's called the mystery. Ah. Well, Helen, this is our final Wavertree legend. Yeah. These were the old gates of Wavertree Hall, which was a big house that stood on this site in Church Road North, now occupied by the School for the Blind. The School for the Blind came here in 1898. The old building, the old Wavertree Hall, was demolished at that time, but the boundary wall and the gates survived. I call them gates, but if you look at them, you'll find that they're not gates at all. There's no way they can be opened, and in fact these replicas of the original gates were only put here in 1986. Right. There is a story behind them though. In the middle of the 19th century, the daughter of the house, the daughter of the wealthy owner of Wavertree Hall, is said to have eloped through these gates with the coachman in the middle of the night. They drove out, this was the main entrance to the hall, and of course this brought great shame. Her father was horrified when he discovered what had happened, and her father ordered that the original gates were to be locked forevermore and never again to be used. So you can see this would have been the original entrance, but there's no way you can now get in. The original gates rusted away in the 1950s, and for many years was just a plain white railing across the gap. But the School for the Blind, over 10 years ago, thought it would be a nice idea to revive the old tradition, and they commissioned the replica which we see today.
And they've never been opened?
They have never been opened, and they can't be opened.
They're not cursed, are they?
I haven't heard that, although the slight amendment to the story says that they didn't get very far. The daughter and the coachman only got as far as Wavertree Lake, and the coach overturned and they were both drowned. So that is another version of the legend.